Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Heartland Hot Dish podcast. This is where we come to the table and rediscover the connection and meaning to our food and culinary treasures of the Great Lakes region. Join us as we discover the traditions and stories woven into the fabric of the Heartland cuisine, from the iconic dishes that define the Midwest to the hidden gems waiting to be discovered. We'll take you on a mouth-watering journey through the diverse culinary landscape of the Great Lakes area. Get ready to indulge your senses and ignite your appetite as we explore the rich tapestry of flavors that make up the Heartland Hot Dish. All right, we're delving into Michigan maple syrup and beyond. It's not really a secret. It's a big thing of our lives, our maple syrup world.
It's maple syrup is not a secret, but the idea that it comes from Michigan for people here,
Oh, sure.
that's that makes sense. But I think for a lot of people around the country, the idea that Michigan makes maple syrup is
Sure.
right because we think of it as Vermont. Vermont is maple
It's
syrup,
Vermont
land.
and it's Canadian.
And it's right.
Those Canadians.
Well, and I kind of feel, I know that Michigan is not officially part of Canada, right? But
It's okay if they wanted to absorb us. They'd be okay with it.
sure, right? But geographically, we're all pretty similar. Same with Vermont, right? It's
100%.
right up there.
Yeah, my sister lives in Vermont and she's a big maple syrup lover. She always sends my kid who loves maple syrup with his pancakes, maple syrup all the time. I am not that guy.
Well, in Vermont, it's maple syrup everywhere. It's in the
It
ice
is, and
cream,
there is,
it's-
and for somebody, I will say it again, who strongly dislikes maple syrup, this should be a fun 45, 50 minutes of talking about something I am not a fan of. My oldest son adores it, and he has to have Vermont stuff. He's not had one in Michigan that he's fallen in love with as much as the one that my sister sends him.
right.
From Vermont.
And officially, for everyone out there who is listening, we in this room had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
that
So-
Kieran did not like maple syrup before
No
we
clue.
decided to sit down and talk about this. Can you are you comfortable talking about that for a
I don't
hot
know. It's
second?
makes my eye twitch. I think that I came to maple syrup way too late, so I have no childhood memories. It was not something in the UK.
When was the first time you experienced this?
I'm probably in my 30s,
Okay.
so nothing of any fond memory of a maple syrup. Didn't really know that was a thing.
What was the context in your 30s? Do you
It
recall
must
the
have been
experience?
some crappy. No, it was a crappy pancake.
Oh, so that wasn't even probably. Was it real maple
No,
syrup?
no,
or
no.
it
We're,
wasn't
talk-
even.
we're talking
Oh
the
my!
corn syrup terribleness
Right.
of the world, and so that's my introduction to this awful thing. I'm like,
I
oh,
don't
hate
even
it.
know if that counts.
I know, but I've
Right.
had it now. I've had it. I mean, we make our own at the farm. I've got some
Mm.
for you guys to try. It's just when you look at the history of it, it's the poor man's sugar, it's the poor man's syrup, and there's just better things out there. For me,
Right.
honey is like the rock star party bus of pure sugar, and I've said it on other podcasts. I've tried to start changing all my dessert recipes to exclusively use honey and to change them so you stop using processed sugar. And so I could get on board with the maple syrup. I will say because we tap trees here at the farm, you tap sugar maples that have like a 2% sugar content in the syrup, but you can tap nearly any tree. You can tap a cherry tree, a birch tree, a black walnut tree. The sugar content's just so much lower. You need so much more syrup. I will say I do like birch syrup.
Because the ratio for maple, a sugar maple, is 40 gallons of
Makes
sap
one. Yep.
to 1 gallon. Do
Yep.
you know the ratio of
It's
your
in the
other trees?
it's in above the hundreds.
Holy cow!
Yeah, no, it's
Oh
stupid.
my!
It's
Why
stupid.
would you even?
I know. So I did it because we have some, right? And
Sure.
we don't have enough maples, and none of ours on the property are sugar maples. They're just maples, which again is not in the 2%. Is now like in the ones or below 1%. And I've blended them, but like the birch, delicious. Black walnut, kind of okay,
Oh,
but maple still don't like it. So I think it legitimately is like that flavor. It's not the syrupiness. It's actually a flavor that's not.
as a side note, I used to work with somebody back in the advertising days, and she told me that she made her own maple syrup, and I was just like, oh my god, that's amazing. And she didn't understand why I was so impressed because she said it's really not a big deal. You just take corn syrup and you put in the maple flavoring, and you got maple
Oh.
syrup.
Oh no!
So when you came in, you brought the thing that makes me dislike maple syrup even more. Like, can I have it and enjoy it? Yeah, I can enjoy the syrup. And ours, when you try it,
Right,
ours is a
people
little
don't
loose.
know what I brought in.
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
it's
right,
the hard candy
Well,
things.
they're
It's the
not
sugar candies.
okay. These are
Yeah.
not the hard
Yeah.
maple candies.
They're
These
not
are the
hard.
soft melt away maple candies.
Maple way into not tastiness.
They melt away on your
I just
palate.
want to be
They're
clear they are
delicious.
from Vermont.
These ones are from Vermont.
My sister,
right.
who does listen to this podcast, will be excited that we're eating Vermont candies. No, those because originally it wasn't maple syrup that was made to take anywhere. It was maple sugar that was made to export or to transport because syrup was much harder too. So that's much more of the product that was like mass produced and was being shipped around everywhere in colonial days of what it was. But maple's a new thing. Like it's not, and I get like maple syrup is like there is some like indigenous history, but it's mostly about water, like the maple water. It's not about syrup. Then the colonials come in and they will reduce it because they've got their cast iron pans and they then make it syrupy. But they turn it into sugar. They don't want the maple syrup. They want the sugar because the sugar's expensive. It's hard to get hold of. But then you mentioned it, like they can't make it white, so they're upset, which I think is great. Like they tried everything to try and make it as white as possible, the syrup, the sugar, because it goes very mustardy brown, like a dark brown. The best you could get was like a very light brown.
Sure, like a beige or a taupe.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And that was the highest grade maple sugar was the one that didn't taste as mapley. It was more sugary.
Because table sugar, right, white granulated cane sugar was so expensive.
100%. It's
right.
a hard process even just to do that nowadays.
This was a luxury product, and here's something that just comes from trees.
Yeah, I always I tell both Marcy and Daniel when we come on the podcast, I always try to find a way to bring it back to either England or weddings. And this is the one where I like because they
you can
made
do both.
I can do both, which is really good. So Queen Victoria wore a white wedding dress, and that was the first real time that happened. And that purity of having something white and how difficult and hard it was to maintain a white wedding dress bled into a lot of different foods, and it's the same thing. A pure white something is very hard to do, and so like white overly processed flour was the same thing. It's not as good for you. It isn't a better product. It was just the ability to perceive to be able to be white was that purity and clarifying.
Right, and white buttercream, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
And it leads us to some really interesting decisions as a as a culture and what we're willing to do to our food to get that white.
So I believe the two of you are probably going to lead today's episode more than I am in my. I've got some fun like history snippets and different things along the journey, but like I like maple water. Totally enjoy. I will say that like fresh from the tree, slightly reduced and turned into a cocktail like that, not syrupy. I'm a fan.
The first time I had maple sap just directly from the tree, I was gobsmacked. I was like, "Dear God,
Delicious.
this good stuff. This is great stuff." And I thought to myself, somebody should bottle this.
100%.
And now they are.
Well, do they?
In Canada.
Canada? Canada.
Canada.
No, I think like the maple water is quite delicious, and like we've used it here to cure meats. We've done porchetta cured into it, which is something that the indigenous folks used to do, and so they would take that maple water, use it. What's interesting is why they never really took it up to syrup was there was no active way to boil it rapidly because they were heating in terracotta pots or wooden pots, and so they're really boiling by heating up very hot rocks, dropping them in for evaporation that way. That's not a way to really get that syrup content down because you said it's 40 gallons to 1. Like that's a lot of syrup.
Right. And what's a
lot
modern
of water.
What modern maple producers are sometimes doing, or some of them, I don't know if you've seen this, is doing reverse osmosis.
Yeah. Yep.
To get some of that water out.
The one in not in Dexter, in Chelsea, right by us, does that. And does the reverse osmosis.
And it's nice to see some modern processes brought into
100%.
A classic type of traditional production. The enemy of maple syrup producers is time, right? Because they don't have that much time to get the sap from the trees into the boiler and the reducer to get that.
No,
down.
we have screwed it up here. There was a lovely lady, Wendy, who worked for us when we first opened the first couple of years, and she tapped as many trees as possible on property. We do not do that anymore because it got too much. And she would bring it in, and then I wouldn't boil it quick enough, and it will turn incredibly quickly. I think I mentioned off mic, so I'll say it again if I'm repeating myself from everyone, but they would make maple vinegar was a big thing in colonial times as well. They would let it acidify because it was a way to access vinegar because that was very expensive also, and maple water made for a really good vinegar back in the day, and that's something you don't see anymore at all in that world. We've done it here accidentally, not in a good way. Accidentally. No, you need to boil it like within the day or two or what it is, and you have to like some of our bags, because we do bags, not cans, at the farm, and you will have to empty them 2 or 3 times a day. But the seasons have got so short now. Like, it used to be that you would start tapping sometime in February and you go all the way through April, and it's just got less and less and less and less and less. And like that's true for Michigan as a whole, I believe.
Right. My favorite part about maple syrup is that this is, and I think the thing that people tend to forget is that it is a springtime food. And spring is kind of this open question. Do you know, I've probably never talked about the Kurt Vonnegut's way that he talks about the seasons.
Well, let us go there now, shall we, Daniel?
Just real quick. Just real quick.
We
So
will not diverge too far, but just for a moment, everyone.
in places where winter is long and intense, he likes to think of this. He doesn't think that winter is the best description for that season. In fact, so he breaks it into 3 different seasons. so you still have, right? You still have fall, right? You still have. No, wait. So I'm sorry. So what you still have fall, you still have spring, but when fall ends, it goes into a period of time that he calls the locking, and this is going to be about November, December, because the earth gets so cold in the midst of winter that it needs some time to prepare. So that's the locking. It's 2 months. Winter is when everything is just dead and frozen and hard and still, and that's about January, February. Then in March, April, what he likes to call that is, because it's not quite spring, because we have this right now. It kind of feels like spring some days, but then it snows and people get really upset because it's like, oh, I thought spring was
We've
here.
got like 3 more snows at least in Michigan
Sure.
right now.
And that period, Vonnegut calls the unlocking, right? It's a chance for the earth to warm up a little bit before it actually gets to spring.
That might be a better sales pitch when I'm trying to sell the March, April wedding. It's the unlocking.
It's the unlocking.
It's the unlocking.
Come to the unlocking.
But the unlocking is, or spring or early spring or fall spring is really when the sap starts to flow, right?
Yeah.
When it's when it's below freezing at night and it's above freezing during the day.
Yeah,
right?
and the more extreme that temperature difference, the better of what it is. And that's just the nutrients going up and down the tree, basically, inside the tree.
Right. The way it was explained to me by a maple producer is that it's effectively like a pump. If you think about things that are
Yep.
cold and that they contract, and when things get warm, they expand, that's the pump that pumps the sap through the trees.
You got it?
And I thought that made
It's
a tremendous amount of sense.
It's also truly an American thing. Like, this is not something back home.
You say North American.
Yeah, sorry, North American. This is not a European thing at all. I've never, like, no part of tapping trees, no part of syrup making in that process is back home. And I looked it up. I tried to look it up. Doesn't exist.
Are there European sugar maples?
I doubt it, but
Right.
there are trees. There are trees you could have tapped, and it was just never a thing. Never became a thing. Even though we
trying
had
to think
sweet
about
trees.
other sources of sugar that
It was the
existed.
delicious honey, and then why would you mess around with a tree? There's a bee making me honey, or I'll tap a tree and boil it for days.
But bees have stingers, and right there.
Yeah, British bees are a lot more mellow. I think we were more into that honey side because we were making booze out of it really quick. Like we went into the mead production.
Oh.
It was the religious side of it for Christianity and that side of place.
Right. In Vermont, they will make booze out of maple, but that's, again,
Kirsty, is that true? You never said anything to me on the phone.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
no,
think
I've-
had
I've-
maple booze.
Booze out of maple.
booze out of maple. You can make booze out of anything that has sugar in it, but it's one of those things where, if you're in Vermont and maple syrup runs,
Is it called something cool? Because like mead is our honey wine, so there must be a cool name. It needs a cool name then.
yeah.
Maybe I could get on board.
Oh, that's
Now
interesting.
you've introduced the
Right.
alcohol option. I might be able to get on board.
I still think I'm still flummoxed
Oh.
by your
Flummoxed.
distaste of maple, because I get having a bad experience with it
Sure.
at the beginning, right? It's always very difficult to get a bad taste out of one's mouth, but artificial maple doesn't really count, right? So now I kind of want to know, like, when you had your first real maple syrup, and
It was probably Vermont.
it was probably Vermont.
It was probably Vermont more
probably
than
on
Michigan.
probably on pancakes.
It was probably on pancakes or one of those candy things you got over there.
Sure.
And those do not appeal to me at all because
Right.
they've just got the sickly sweet. And I am Mr. To be clear, everyone, you should know this by now.
He's Mr. Sugar.
I am. I adore sugar more. I gonna have a problem the rest of my life with sugar, but it's just too much in a different way. And there's nothing. It feels so much more lost in its flavors than when I've had honey. Honey, like I can feel like I'm tasting the flowers or different things. Maple syrup seems very like dense and heavy and weighted in the back of my mouth more than like honey seems very exciting and springy. It doesn't feel very springy. Maple syrup does not feel
It does
springy
not feel. I
springy at all.
completely agree. Yes.
It's very viscous. Yeah.
It's very
Yes.
viscous.
Right.
Viscous.
But yes, it is weighty and it is heavy.
Yeah.
Right, and these candies, what I love about them,
Come on,
right, is
throw me one.
uh, what I love about them
I'll
is
mute myself while I eat it, everyone. It's fine.
is
Me first.
is
I
how
love these.
is how portable they. One, it's how portable they are, and two, as opposed to honey, which I also love, these candies are not sticky.
These are not. I mean, this is still hard. You said this was soft. This
If
is.
you bite into it, it resolves itself on the palate. It becomes creamy.
Yeah, oversold the
It's
softness.
molded sugar.
This ain't no toffee.
Right.
No.
It's no.
It melts on the tongue.
It's almost like a melt away mint, but instead of that, you've got these rich caramelized flavors of the maple.
So it's supposed to. Doesn't it kind of evoke like when you? Oh, Kieran.
I appreciate you taking the bullet.
You just, you look like you're two. You look like a toddler having a tantrum over there.
You know,
Like-
it's like black treacle, but in a bad way.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced you like sugar.
Oh my god. No, but like I remember like sticky toffee pudding, and you
Sure,
put treacle
okay.
in it. Treacle is not delicious. Like
Mhm.
treacle is not a good thing. Black treacle, which is a very dark syrup. It's like sorghum on steroids.
Mhm.
It is pitch black. This reminds me of that. Now, I could put maple syrup in a cake and make sticky toffee pudding with it, and I'd be okay with it. Great, it's been hidden by the dates and the other flavors. But this has that black. That's what it is. It's the black treacle. It
Oh,
tastes like
that's-
black treacle, and black treacle is gross
Okay.
because you're excited, like
Right.
child, sugar, yummy, and then you get black treacle. You're like, that's disgusting.
So
Why did
this
you?
taps into an early childhood trauma.
It must.
Right.
I must have. I must have gone in the
Have you
cupboards. at
have you
home.
blacked it out,
I,
Kieran?
yeah, I must have gone in the cupboards and
Right.
like, ooh, syrup.
Right.
This will
Yeah.
be good.
Ooh, sugar.
No,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating.
So this doesn't this kind of evoke? Isn't like maple syrup on snow a thing? Like
So maple syrup on snow is the thing, and I actually used to think that maple syrup on snow was
Just
just.
have any water. I'm not happy.
do you want some coffee?
You can wash it down with
Maple coffee.
You can wash it down with the bottle of your own syrup.
Oh, nice. Let me try mine instead. Keep going. Sorry.
I'm sure I've got other treats in my bag.
Do you really?
I'm sure. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. But what was the thought I was going to capture?
See,
oh,
that's
No.
better. And I know it's
your own
hard.
syrup.
No, but like syrup is better than the candy. The candy, I think, makes it way worse for me.
and
It's not texture; it's the flavor intensity.
I
of it.
understand.
And our syrup, you'll see it. I mean, it's cold here right now in Michigan, but it's not really cold. And our syrup is not. I think you're meant to take it like 66% sugar content from like 2%.
Yeah, it's
This is not that. Like we've left it a little. I mean, one, we don't make a lot of syrup, so we leave it a little loose. Okay, keep going.
is
It's-
that from this season?
Last?
It's very specific, and that's where I'm kind of fascinated about the science behind it. Like you have to reduce it to 66 to 67% exactly.
Sorry, we're all moving away from our mics now. I'm passing out some syrup. Everyone's got
We're
treats.
passing food around too, right?
Because
God, he's
what
got
did
more.
they say? Too high and
This
it
has nothing to do with syrup.
crystallizes, or is it too high and it crystallizes? What did they say? But how do you get it to that specific percentage?
Through boiling.
Right, but no, how do you know?
Oh, I think
How do
it's
you measure it?
right. I think it's weight or density.
Yeah, it's a density.
It's a
thing.
density.
It's a-
But,
there's-
but how do you know that
got a
it's
little rod that you drop it in there. So
Oh,
when
okay.
you before there were ways to test it, it's about the viscosity, so it's about the size of the bubble. And once you know the size of the bubble, you're good.
Oh.
Also, they would do the whole snow test, which is so one of the cool ones that I saw was you would take a snowball and you drop it into the syrup, and if it stuck to the outside of the syrup and turned into a candy, and that was to make sugar. To be clear, it was not about syrup. Everything was about sugar back in the day.
Right.
Was making like the block sugar. I shouldn't keep saying that, but like a block of sugar was what they were trying to make. They weren't really making syrup. Syrup was a completely to the maple house and the people around the maple house. That was about it. They didn't transport it anywhere different. It really, and we talked about this. It was Second World War. I always say Second World. It was the Civil War in America, where they canned food that allowed them to transport the syrup.
I love how you think that makes it a new thing because it was the Civil War.
It's the very new thing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, everything is pre or post antebellum, or everything is antebellum, or what's the other one? Sorry, lack of sleep. But the sugar will perk me up. But I love the texture of your syrup, Kieran. It's not like overly sticky and thick. And
Yeah, I made it
yeah.
less gross.
Yeah.
No, your syrup is delightful. It's got great flavor. I'm not surprised at all.
Because I know like the other test was supposed to be it has to coat the back of a spoon, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you know that it's done.
And this is a little loose. The reality of this is not just maple. This is probably black walnut and birch mixed.
Sure.
We've made separates to keep them separate, but then at some point, Wendy was here for a couple of years and did it, and then at some point we just gave up and was like, "Sod it! It's our syrup."
Yeah.
And so if it's all these things, it becomes our blend and what it is. And we
that's,
use this for kids camps. Like this gets used up every year at kids camps, and then it's gone.
and that's a very chefy thing to do, not the kids camp, but the mix different, but the mix different flavors, right? Because I had a friend, and he insisted that the best way of sweetening your coffee, if you were going to use an artificial sweetener, is to not select one of them, but to use all of them because it creates a broader, rounder flavor.
Yeah, and this actually has a lot of enjoyment in it for me. I definitely. We're now passing around some chili flavored curry leaf cashew nuts to get
What
the
do
place
these
with.
have to do with
Nothing,
maple
not a
syrup?
thing.
They have nothing.
It's a palate cleanser
It's a
for
palate
Kieran.
cleanser, right.
Oh, those are fun.
Let's talk about cashew nuts. No,
Right. These have nothing to do with Michigan. But
they're very yummy though.
thank you. I bought them myself.
What are they? You should say on the podcast.
Sure.
Those
These,
who don't like
right.
maple syrup and you're suddenly forced to eat it, these nuts are a good palate cleanser.
these are the Nuts and Nuts Indonesian cashews with chili lime leaves. They're available from Zingerman's mail order.
Good
Right.
sales pitch, right? They're really good.
They're
I've never had those.
Right. Well, the thing that makes these special is that they're actually roasted in coconut oil, and it's the coconut oil that gives them that incredible texture.
It's very Indian flavor, like
Right.
in a very happy Indian.
But it's
way.
for me, the thing about these that just blows me away is that texture, that crunch, and the
Oh yeah,
creaminess.
a
Right.
really great cashew is very
You
good.
guys, I'm nuts about these nuts.
Okay, coming back to maple
back to
syrup.
maple, because I had this right when I first heard about maple on snow, I was enthralled, and I was just like, but I had thought of, since I did not grow up with this, in Miami, the idea, in my mind sounded like you were making a snow cone, and you would just like go out, you would get the fresh snow, you would pour your maple syrup over it, and you would have a maple flavored snow cone, which is what I did, and it was delicious. But when I visited an actual maple farm and they wanted to demonstrate this, it was warming up the maple syrup, putting it on snow, letting the snow harden it, wrapping it up around a stick,
Yep.
and then being able to eat that.
Ooh.
That's like a whole thing.
Oh,
So you have
so you did not know that either.
you have like a
No.
flat bed of snow. You drizzle it over and
Yeah.
then
drizzled a
it
hot
rolls,
maple over.
and within like less than like 10, 15 seconds, you can roll it, and then that's the candy that you get first. And so like that's the bit where if you're in maple country, like that's when you know it's good to go, because that's when spring is really coming. It's waking up. The earth is waking up. And you get to have that sweet treat. It's good, but I still don't like that.
So you know who wants to do this at the Roadhouse, Ari?
Oh really?
Yeah, he wants to sell it.
I mean, I make maple water. We could do that.
Yeah, he wants to make the maple syrup snow
on snow.
on snow,
as
and then he
candy
wants to
wrapped
sell
around.
it at the Roadhouse, probably for $20.
That's a hard production.
Because you
line.
have to, because you have to do it in the moment, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's not one of those things that you can make.
yeah.
in
And it's
advance.
where you've taken the syrup past the 66%. Like this is now entering sugar, like these candies. You've gone into like the close high 70s, low 80s.
Right.
You're turning into sugar at this
You're
point.
talking about Celsius.
And I think I am. But when we talk about
So
like
that's-
these
what
hard
is that?
candies,
216,
And just
217
to
Fahrenheit.
describe these as soft to anyone who's never had them. If you're in some other country and some reason you have been gifted the joy of not having maple syrup before, these are not soft candies. These are definitely brittle. It's because it's crystallized, and I also don't like that. Like
It's-
some level of the
It's
crystallization.
crystal
of the
sugar.
It's
I know.
depending.
Yeah.
It's dependent actually on the producer. I have had much softer versions of these, and the softer ones are the ones that I adore and I love. Unfortunately, the producer that I knew that made the best ones I've ever had is no longer
Karen.
in business.
I really
So-
keep coming back and trying to
So-
love it.
right. It was Riverside Maple out in Schenectady.
Just to be clear, it's not crystallized in like a bad way. It's
No,
like it's sugar crystals that have been turned into candy.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
feel like it's that to me. The textural side is not enjoyable either. Now, if you had is that black treacle? It's like it's been taken too far. That's what it feels like. It's something that's gone. It's slightly overcooked or it's slightly too reduced. That's why I don't hate it, and I'm not I mean, ours is not for sale anyway. I don't hate Corman Farms one because it doesn't feel like it's over reduced, and it's probably not maple syrupy enough, right,
Right.
for most people. But it still feels light enough, and maybe that's it. It's the density of how, not even overly sweet, but like that flavor gets too intense for me. It's too much.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering
you-
if there are honeys that fall
Oh,
outside of your flavor
Hundred
palette.
hundred percent.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
is when you get to like real heavy buckwheat ones, like incredible buckwheat ones, which I can adore that they exist. Not my cup of
Not
tea.
for you.
What
Right.
about
yeah.
because as seasons progress they get darker? Do you just like not like the late season ones either?
No,
or
it's like the intensity of what that flavor
Right.
is. I want to try other things. I want it to be experiential, not just like I feel like it sits very like maple syrup hits very heavy for me. Like that is gonna stay with me for a long in a good way for other people, but for
Sure,
me
yeah.
too much. I'm sorry. We don't need to dwell on my
So
dislike
no,
of
well,
maple
it's
syrup,
just
man.
no, it's interesting. So one of the things, as far as like the distinction between grades of honey, we talked about light versus dark, and the intensity of flavor, darker being more intensely maple flavored, which you think would appeal to people, but not necessarily. I suppose it depends on the palate, but the sugar content itself doesn't change. It's just the flavor. So yeah. Um,
It just feels like you've over because there are some times where maple houses have scorched it,
Hmm.
mhm.
which does happen, and they've still got syrup. It's not like burnt, but they've over reduced some of it, and the blend hasn't gone good. And they'll use that for curing. They'll turn it into vinegar. You can cook with it, but I feel like a lot of maple syrup to me has gone too far.
Yeah.
So maybe I just need to
Yeah.
find a lighter syrup that
Right.
has other things.
And as we're talking about these grades, right? I long for the days before the grades were changed, right? Because everything now has been made grade A, right? The fine, but it used to be that there was grade A and grade B,
Yep.
right? And the foodie secret at the time was that grade B sounds like it's the worst maple syrup. It sounds like it's deficient in some sort of way,
Yep.
and that's what they would label the darkest of the syrups, and that was the one that
It was the better game.
well, it's the one, right? So in our modern day, people who want maple syrup, for the most part, are looking for something with a big, bold maple flavor, right? To give you that pleasure, if you like the pleasure
Sure.
of maple syrup that it brings. But back when the grades were established, the idea was trying to create that sugar substitute.
Yeah. I
So-
will be honest, like I have found to have some joy in it because my son loves it.
Mhm.
So through having a kid who's 12 now, he adores the maple syrup. So will I have it on my pancakes? Yes. Like it's not like complete loathe and despise, but like it isn't. I'd rather have honey. I'd rather have honey and butter, and I'm much happier on my pancakes. But his adornment of it, like he thinks it's the best thing out there as well.
Well, here's the thing. If I'm cooking with it, I want that flavor. And I'm thinking of there's a story, and this is a folk story. We don't know necessarily if this is true, about the Native American woman who accidentally cooked her husband's moose steak
Mm.
in maple sap,
Yep.
and he loved it, and if I'm applying a glaze to a ham or a steak or something of that nature, like I want that extra depth of flavor.
That cure, taking the water that we get off the trees and using that slightly reduced
Mhm.
with salt, great.
Yeah.
Because it's light and airy. It's not heavy and dense for me. It's got that perfumey, light flavors of what it is. And maybe I've just not had the syrup I fall in love with. Because to call everything maple syrup is just very difficult. That's the bit where I get worried, like the Canadian side, because I think it's like 70% or something comes from Quebec, right?
Mhm.
Where all the maple syrup. But then they have like hopefully I said it already, like the strategic reserve of maple syrup. Everyone sells it to the state, and then the state holds it and releases it, and they're labeled and they're checked. But at some point, you've lost your like this came from this place, and I know it gets tracked, but like the potential of it being lost of its hyper regionality at that point becomes a little scary. Like the strategic reserve of maple syrup seems a little weird. Whereas like the ones in Vermont that I've gone to with my sister, I feel like the Shack, and there's one in just on the outskirts of Chelsea that is the same thing, and like that's fun to see it. Of
Right.
like,
And I do kind of wonder, if in Canada there are such larger tracts of land that it can actually be a legitimate business. For most maple producers in America.
Side hustle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
that's what it was. It was a way to make a bit of cash, and times you weren't making cash, right?
Yes.
I think now that they do the vacuum, so maple syrup tapping, it's usually a bag or a tin that's drilled a hole in the side of the tree. You got a little tap, you hang a bucket or a bag, collects the water, drip it out. Now it's all about the vacuum tubes. And so that's where you do exactly the same thing of tapping it, and it's got the plastic tubes, and there's a motor and a vacuum that's pulling the water to one place, which is great, not having to go around and collect buckets.
Yes, and it helps the maple producers with the challenge of time.
Yep.
From the tree to the boiler.
Yep.
However, you know the major problem with that?
No, go for it.
Oh, squirrels.
Oh, they get in there.
Yeah.
And get
Squirrel
Animals are a problem.
because as if there's a hole in the line anywhere, it doesn't work because it requires the
yeah,
vacuum.
yeah.
And squirrels know that squirrels are amazing, right?
Oh, I didn't
and
know
they
this.
know that there's delicious things in here, and so if there's a hole in the line, then you've got to go out, and if you have a lot of trees and a lot of
trying to
lines, you
find
have
that.
to find the
Oh,
hole.
that sounds awful.
Yeah, I know.
So
Right.
I
Sorry.
was reading
Because yeah, it's just drawing air from wherever that is, and that's it.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was reading Corinne's delightful blog about maple syrup when she visited the maple syrup sugar bush for the bakehouse, the producer, and they were telling this adorable story about how, like, as kids, the girls used to collect it by the pail and sell it to the school, their school teachers and their
Oh yeah,
classmates.
yeah.
Until the health inspector came along, then they had to turn it into a bona fide business, and they started, using this line method. But what was interesting about that is like, like it was cute and all as a side hustle, but then it does become a full time thing, because you have to watch out for the animals. You have to like be very very particular with how you're extracting it.
Well, and if you
Um,
talk to local producers now, because the season's got so much shorter, the
Right.
guy in Chelsea, we went there last year. We were like, the season just opened up, and we were going to taste it. He goes, oh, it's terrible. Like, because he turned it into a big part of his income,
Mm.
and all of a sudden it's not anymore. It's become much more of a side hustle again, because the season has got so much shorter, or the weather's got so much more wonky, that it's not a viable business on a regular
Right.
basis now.
Then you have to think about the microorganisms in the trees and how they're affecting it as well, and what you're doing. You can't really add a germicide because you'll ruin the tree, you'll kill the tree. So it's just a lot of like things to think about. It's not as easy as tapping into the side of a tree and letting it drip. Like there's a lot that goes into it.
Well, that's all I've ever done, so maybe that's
Right.
I think me and Wendy may have watched like one video once, and they were like, "Oh, we're good to go."
Oh, let's give this a whirl.
And like for us, I mean, we're making very small quantities at the farm. I
Right.
mean, it's
Yeah.
shocking. Like I've got a little squeezy bottle on here, but we probably make, I don't know, maybe 10 quarts. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so it's like liquid gold for us. There's a dinner coming up at the end of March that we're going to do with somebody. And like, that's one of the things I'm like, yeah, I have this little gem, but it's like, you want to use it, we need to make a big deal of it, or we don't use it. Like, it's not, it's not something to come out like, ooh, would you like some on your pancakes? The kids get it for kids camp, but that's it.
I like
Whatever
the
it's worth.
idea of honey on pancakes because my hunch is that honey doesn't sink into the pancake
Correct.
as
Right.
much
It's
as the maple
viscosity.
syrup
See, that's the
does.
funny thing.
Right.
Honey, way more viscous.
Yes.
Right.
It's much more of a barrier, where this is watery. Like,
Right.
even when reduced right, it's still very
So
not as
it's
viscous.
interesting that you mentioned that because so this is maple syrup is actually used as a fuel for cyclists, for like pro cyclists, and there's a guy in Vermont. His name is Ted King. I love Ted King.
Kirsty, if you're
who-
listening in Vermont, Marcy would like to meet Ted King.
Ted King, come see us in Michigan. So he endorses this product called Untapped, and it's made in Vermont, and it is literally Untapped. All they do is put maple syrup into little pouches for you to consume while on the bike. And what appeals to me
water.
about it,
The maple water.
maple water.
Oh, that's great.
Well, no, it's maple syrup,
Aye.
but
I got excited
Is-
for everyone for a
well,
minute.
maple water, I'm sure would be, just as fine. The point being, like, there's all these nutrients in maple syrup besides just sugar,
And
and
there's little, like, cute little runny thing.
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
like the little
mouthwash things.
leaf.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like red. It's cute.
I know you can't see it, Daniel, but they're kind of cute.
They're kind
I'm
of
sure
cute.
they are.
Maple syrup does have potassium, manganese, and like other nutrients in it that are supposed to be really good for your muscles while you're exercising. Um, and what appeals to me about it is like because typically you can buy something called gels in a packet that would produce the same effect for you, but the gels are really really thick and viscous, and when you're like on a bicycle and you're going 20 miles an hour and you're breathing hard, you don't really want like this thick stuff in your mouth where you're trying to like consume it. So the maple syrup, on the other hand, because it is less viscous, I feel like would be that much more appealing for
It
somebody
makes
just trying to.
flavored ones. Did you see the
Yeah,
flavors
have
like
they have
lime and ginger? And see,
yeah
I might get on board with that.
to change up the palate a little bit. I'll have to get you some of these.
My sister can send it from Vermont for us. We'd like some untapped things.
Yeah,
from East
okay,
Coast
send us. Does she get a discount?
I don't know. She'll find a way to. I
Uh,
like that though. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a very nice. I bet it's not as reduced as. Have you had it before? You've had it before?
I haven't.
Oh.
No. So I've been really, really intrigued by it, though. It's something that I do want to try because I feel like, my palate gets tired when I'm on the bike and do these long races. But also,
Me too.
I don't like Kieran. Let's go for a ride, Kieran.
Oh my God, we'd
It's
make
getting
it like
nice
2
out.
miles and I'd be done.
But it's like I was saying, it's just so hard to chew or like put something in your mouth that it's like thick or chewy or
Well, I'm imagining it's not as reduced to full blown syrup if you're having it like
Right.
that. So that's
Yeah.
I could probably get more on board with that. Their
Right.
big seller apparently is lime,
Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
I-
Sweet and tart.
Yeah.
sweet and tart.
I
Yeah.
get that.
just like me.
So they yeah.
For me, I use maple syrup probably the most in yogurt.
Ooh,
Right?
yogurt.
To give, because yogurt's great for you.
Sure.
Cultured dairy, right? But getting the stuff from the store, so much of it is super, super sweet, really, really sugary. Right. So what I like to do is get plain yogurt and flavor it myself, and it's so easy just to take a little bit of maple syrup. It mixes up very well with
Sure.
yogurt, and I've tried it with honey, which does not mix in.
No,
nearly
it
as
stays
well.
as a separate entity.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So
A good
That-
call for it.
right.
Yeah.
So
Again, maple water, totally on board. Semi-reduced maple syrup, totally on board.
Mhm.
But the full-on to syrup, and then once you go all the way to the sugar, I'm out. I'm
It's right,
100%
right.
not playing anymore.
So it's that cooking, it's that caramelization. It's
It
that-
must be the
right.
caramel. It must. I
Right.
think in eating it and sitting here and trying to figure it out because I never have. I think it's the black treacle.
So we
Parents-
I
mentioned
feel like we had that breakthrough.
We had a breakthrough.
we mentioned your
This was my food therapy session for the day.
we mentioned your sister in Vermont, and you also mentioned that she had recommended maple syrup with pickles, and I want to hear more about this.
I wish I told her like she's like I'm going to work. I can't talk to you right now. But it's like the sugar candy, and then you'd have a pickle chaser with it, like a pickle chaser with it. I think that's something the deli should do. Daniel, you're at the deli. I like the idea of a maple candy, like
And a
not
pi- and a
this, but
pickle.
like the caramel candy, like the snow candy, and then a
Oh,
pickle
right.
chaser right after.
I am all about this.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I could get on board
Like,
with
I've
because
heard
then
of-
I would remember the pickle and not the maple
I've
syrup.
heard of pickling with maple syrup, but I didn't realize that pickles and a maple syrup were like a
And the-
flavor combination.
And the reason I'm calling these candies soft, by the way, is because there is a hard maple candy that is
No,
more,
much
that is
harder.
more like a lollipop
You-
without the stick.
You're both very correct. Once you put
Right.
this in the mouth, it does break down very quickly. When you say soft, I think toffees, and
Sure.
that is not what I got.
No, right, and the toffee is more like the maple on snow.
Did either of you, and I'm going to pull it back up because I had some details on it, did you ever hear about the great maple syrup heist? Did you ever watch that documentary?
Did not watch that
Did
documentary.
you ever watch that documentary? I didn't even watch it recently. I remember this from the past. This isn't even like the last 24 hours of researching it. I got to find out what it is. In 2011 and 2012, the thieves stole 3,000 tons of maple syrup from the Canadian Quebec maple syrup reserves worth $18 million.
Wow.
That's just cool. So when you leave today or when you stop listening to this, Google it. There's some documentary out there to watch about it. I'm sure I watched it on Netflix years ago. Fascinating.
a heist
And they
with maple
so they
syrup.
stole it, and they weren't like, I believe this is going to be proved to be wrong in my memory of it, but they weren't like just stealing barrels. They were watering it down, and because it was in the reserve, no one was checking, and so they were
Oh.
tapping out maple syrup and putting in they were watering down the maple syrup basically
Watering it down in the reserve.
in the reserves to
Whoa.
steal maple syrup, which is just kind of cool. $18 million.
That's a lot of watering down.
I do the whole Canadian thing of like holding it to stabilize price is a very cool thing. Like, I think for a lot of farmers and being able to say, I know my maple syrup will be worth this much and this is what it is. It's a little bit like the diamond industry. See, I can take it back to weddings again. Or what is that? De Beers? De Beers? De Beers? De Beers?
That sounds right.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or where like when you originally the stock market was created to do a lot of different controlling of prices, the fact that the Canadians have really monopolized that to hold that price stable, it means in good years the price is the same, in bad years the price is the same within reason. It doesn't spike shockingly. And real maple syrup is expensive.
It is.
It is not cheap.
Right. It's a lot of labor to collect the sap. It's a lot of time and energy to reduce it. And
Yes.
then you've got liquid that you have to transport, which is also not cheap.
Not cheap at all. And that was the whole reason why it didn't get out until like the American Civil War, like a couple of years ago.
just barely. Yeah, right.
Barely a few years back of what it is. I just think that's interesting canning. I just wrote a press piece about sous videing, and sous videing comes from the Napoleonic times when you were canning things. That was with lead, not the best way to go.
Ooh.
Yeah. Canning with lead. I mean, it worked, but not really well. But this was about tin. And so when it got be able to, and I think it was like 1816 was original canning for Americans, and then in like 1860, is it 1861 the American Civil War? Oh, come on, guys!
You're asking me to think about
it's like
history and
1860
dates.
something. I'm sorry,
I feel like Marcy's the historian.
1861 to 1865, I believe, is Civil War time. And that was when you could put the top on successfully. Like cans
Oh.
existed before, but making it sealed and sealed really good
Was
happened
the
during the
hardest
Civil
part.
War over here. And that was when it was tin, not lead. Because lead lined, while much easier and efficient, was not good for your health.
Amazingly.
No,
Amazingly-
amazingly, it could
Storing
kill you.
food in lead containers, not good.
And I think one of the reasons that people stay away from real maple syrup is exactly the price, right? That
Yeah.
it's an expensive.
Will you get the shock value of like the store bought corn syrup badness,
Yes.
which is not expensive at all?
No.
And then you go to real stuff and you're like, oh. And you do need less, but somehow my son still uses more.
It's true, right? It's.
He doesn't like this. He doesn't like the farm stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
He likes the store bought.
No, he likes the Vermont stuff that's like
Oh, okay.
like the little tiny ones that are like $35 for nothing.
So not the Mrs. Butterworth.
No. We have some? Yes, my wife likes that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She's a Tecumseh girl. She grew up on the like cheap stuff in a good way.
Yeah, and artificial
Fun
maple
memory.
flavor exists, in
For a
some
reason.
good
For a
forms,
reason.
right? For donut frosting, right? I'm trying to think of some others.
I think that like that's that fond memory. If I would have had that, I could have probably made my way to great maple syrup. Whereas, and I also have a bit of a mental block where I don't eat it very often. Like this wasn't good, and you did see my reaction of the candy, and it was real, but it's not as bad as I remember it
Okay.
from the last time I had it. But I've avoided it so much because I'm like, I don't really like it. This is usually there's one in our fridge of the farm stuff at home, and I will rarely, if ever, touch it. Like it's not something I use on a regular basis. It's something that will go in some kind of pork dish or a chicken marinade sometimes as a sugar substitute, but that's about it. Like it doesn't. I don't go to grab it, so I'm not like, oh, that's good or that's a good place. to be."
And the farm stuff is delicious, right?
Yeah.
Very much more nuance and flavor, right? Because it's coming from multiple trees.
It's coming from multiple
This
trees.
is going to be this case for
And that's the bit where I think the reduction of it having to be maple syrup has to get to a specific sugar content, whereas I don't have to do that. So I can keep it a little looser and airy than it really needs to be, which is a good thing.
If you're going to be making an apple cider, it's going to be more delicious if you use a blend of apples as opposed to a single apple.
Hell bells, yeah, it is.
I know, right?
Deliciousness
So
of
it should
our
not be surprising that the same is true. That the same is true for syrup, and it's right. And I also just want to say that I am less of a fan of pouring maple syrup all over my pancakes, and it's largely because of the thing I had alluded to, that the pancakes just absorb all of that maple syrup. So for the folks at home who are listening and are reluctant to have maple syrup because they need to use a lot of it, if you pour a little ramekin, a little side dish, and then you dip your pancake into that, as opposed to pouring the syrup over
Yeah.
the pancake, you will actually use less.
And as a
That's
parent, you
typically-
need
and
to do
enjoy
that.
it more.
That's typically how I do it, is I put a bite into the butter and the syrup and instead of pouring over it so that they don't get soggy.
Wait, you put the bite into the
So-
butter?
The butter and the syrup, yeah.
Wait, so are the butter and the syrup combined into one dish, and
Yes,
it's like
I
a buttery
swirl
syrup?
I swirl the butter into the syrup and then I put my
Oh.
bite of pancake in there.
Oh.
It's delightful. I love your facial expressions this morning.
That might
You're twitching.
that actually could help. I'm thinking this could help Kieran. Like that
Kieran,
this technique. It's
Kieran.
right.
Honey,
Yeah.
just use
No, I
honey, guys.
understand.
Just
So you guys, this reminds me of how you're supposed to eat sorghum,
Right,
with
sure.
biscuits. Like you put a plate of sorghum and take a pat of butter and swirl the butter into the sorghum and then put your biscuit
I love
into it.
sorghum syrup.
Yeah.
Now that's what made my head explode.
I know.
Because,
I'm
right.
so sorry.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that the
No,
sorghum. No.
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 No,
Does
it
doesn't
swirls.
hit. It
no,
doesn't hit
no,
that black treacle.
No, it's not so dark. Not not color wise. Like the flavor is so intense on maple when it's gone. I just feel like it's like 2% too much of what one is or where it is. That's like my feeling of like if you came back just a little bit, I could probably have got more on
That's
board.
a
with it.
very thin line.
I know. I do believe, but like that's why I can completely 100% tolerate the stuff I make because it's loose, and I haven't tested it. Like I could. I've got a thermometer. I've got a gauge for it. I just don't believe that it would be a good. Like I think it would be bad. if
I
ever
kind of
used it.
wonder, like, if one could find a very light syrup from a specific producer that would pass your test.
Mm.
Right, one of those.
So one of the things we didn't talk about, you guys, I do have a really quick story from the Roadhouse. One of the things we didn't talk about was maple syrup in cocktails, and I feel like it's a
I mean, I did say if you added booze, I could get more on board, but let's just make
right.
a maple water that's boozy.
So yeah, maple syrup. I think maple syrup and bourbon are a common thing, and for
Blech.
people,
Like take good bourbon and then it's like
yeah.
it's like cheese with pineapple chunks in it. You know it's bad cheese, right? That's how I feel about
Pineapple
maple
chunks.
bourbon. Is that you are
So,
just hiding a bad product behind something else? I made
Um,
Daniel cry.
Real,
No.
really quick story. So back in, I think this is about 2015, 2016. So we had a bartender at the Roadhouse, Amos. Everyone, do you remember Amos?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Amos. Wonderful guy. So right around that time, we did still have Snow's Sugar Bush maple syrup at the Roadhouse there in Mason, and for ease of pouring this for the guests, we kept the maple syrup in pitchers, right? Like large pitchers. But we used those same pitchers for other things like iced tea, water, so
Oh.
on and so forth. So one of our servers at the time had to go top off somebody's iced tea at a table. I accidentally grabbed the wrong pitcher, grabbed a pitcher of maple syrup, and topped off the guest's iced tea with maple syrup.
Wow.
Yeah.
They were having a good night.
So this, it was during a very busy Sunday brunch when we used to do like over 800 covers. So I can only imagine what was going through this guy's head at the time. So Amos thought about this for a second and thought about, because our iced tea is actually, we make it with Earl Grey, thought about the flavor combination of bergamot with maple syrup and created this cocktail where it's scotch, maple syrup, our Rishi Earl Grey
you took
iced
scotch.
tea,
You didn't take. You couldn't use the
Scotch.
American bourbon. You had to take
scotch,
Scotch. Oof,
lemon
hate you a
juice,
little bit more
and
now.
Angostura bitters.
Oh, you took what? No.
created this cocktail of it. It called it the Maple Tree, TREA. And it was a hit. People loved this drink. It was written up by Meg Weislick. It was it was a big deal. And
I feel like I need to have one right now just to be sure.
I feel like we need to resurrect this. I feel like we need to put it back on the Roadhouse menu for a month, especially like right now while maple syrup is being harvested in the month of March.
So scotch, lemon, maple, and bitters.
Angusters.
And iced tea.
And the iced tea.
Yeah,
Oh,
iced
great.
tea. But
right.
it has to be
You've
it
taken
has to
so
be
many different
bergamot
nations'
iced
things
tea.
and
Right.
abused them.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me see if I can find this.
I'm playing around with this in my head.
I'm
That-
also
okay,
like, you
so-
took iced tea, scotch, maple syrup. What?
Right.
What? You just all over the shop?
Here's what he said about it, Amos.
It's a lot of
Um,
malty, caramelized, citrusy stuff, right? I'm getting there.
The smokiness from the
Sure.
scotch is
Angostura bitters is German.
Guys, listen. The smokiness.
I'm really confused.
Listen, listen, listen.
Germans,
Scolded by
it's,
Listen, the smokiness from the scotch is reminiscent of burning leaves, and there's a touch of bergamot in the iced tea that offers a floral astringency. The maple syrup from Snows rounds out the complex flavors in this spirited autumn drink, lifted by a touch of brassy lemon. Enjoy this recipe sitting around a bonfire with friends or at Zingerman's Roadhouse while chatting with our friendly bartenders about their craft.
Well, now you will have to put it back on, because we have enough listeners now that they're going to be in that world.
And again, right? This is thinking about maple as a fall flavor, which is continues
Yeah.
to blow my mind, right? That
Yeah.
it's right.
Because I know, like I was just saying that we should offer this in March because we'll start tapping trees soon in Michigan. But this was a fall drink. But I guess I can see that with the
Okay.
Do we as Michiganders
scotch.
light bonfires in the spring too? Is that a thing that we do?
I think we
learning.
should.
I'm still learning.
If we
We
don't
are.
already, we
I am,
definitely should.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Is
mean,
it, well,
we
we
do
do
in
them
Chelsea,
in the
downtown
winter
Chelsea.
too.
Soon. Well, as
Yeah.
soon as you
Yeah.
can, either side, before it gets too cold,
Sure, yeah.
and then as soon, like right now, is totally let's put a little bonfire going.
Yeah.
Angostura bitter, created by a German for the Venezuelan army in Bolivia,
Keep
to
out
assist
scurvy?
them. No, it's to help with stomach ailments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
it's a
used-
digestive.
So you used a Scottish thing,
Yeah.
a Venezuelan German thing, iced tea. Weird. One, why would you ever make
Earl
iced?
Grey British?
Right, and I'm like,
Yeah.
bergamot? I don't want bergamot with my scotch. That's got weird.
Yeah.
You then took
Yeah.
lemon in there too.
Lemon.
And what else? Was there anything?
Well, lemon, I would imagine, because it goes with iced tea.
yeah.
right.
And all the other things.
But yeah, this was his way of turning the accident, because a lot of things that you say this all the time, Kieran, things happen because of accidents.
Yeah.
Happy accidents,
I
right?
feel like you'd have an accident after.
Right.
thinking that.
I do like the maple in the iced tea, right? That's
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. I could get on board with, that. That's fine.
And this is the other.
I'm not a
fun
big
thing.
fan of iced tea either, so we can have two things I don't like in a glass.
I think this is one of those really fun things about maple syrup is how well it incorporates into liquid ingredients.
Yes, I do think, like, in coming out of this and trying to not be a hater of anything, and I don't truly hate it, it's just not my thing. I think I might try to be more willing to use it as a cooking ingredient than as something I'm using as a garnish on something. Because I think, like, as an ingredient in something, I could get on board, because then that would release the flavors that it needs to in not such an intense way. When I think about the porchetta that we make here, could that have a maple syrup brine that's been put on it? 100%. And we've done that with the water, but we could take our syrup. The problem for me is, like, it's such an expensive product when you buy such good maple syrup.
Mhm.
To then use it in any other way other than a finisher seems very hard. Like, oh, you're using it in such small quantities in your recipe of the dish or what it is. Marcy's vigorously texting or looking on her phone.
I'm
scared there's another new thing coming.
No, sorry, I had a text work really quick.
Okay, well, that's good. I was
No,
scared
it
there
has
was
nothing
another
to do with
cocktail.
maple syrup.
I was like, there's another cocktail
somebody
coming.
somebody at the Roadhouse asked me a question. It has nothing to do with
To
this.
maple
and I had to
syrup?
respond.
A maple syrup question, like, why?
It is
somebody-
not a maple syrup
If
question.
this was live, people could be requesting it right now. I could mess with it. We should do a
Be
live one.
requesting
What-
the cocktail.
What kind of the cocktail itself? Should I read off the recipe really quick?
No.
Okay.
So I can see maple syrup playing very well in an old fashioned, right? And I think this is kind of like where you were talking about
yeah.
the idea of
Sure.
if you're going to use it, make it more of an assertive
Just
part of the dish.
Yeah,
so you're
just a drop. Yeah, like instead of the demerara sugar cube, you mean?
exactly.
Like I could get down with that, or the actual like the candy, the maple sugar candy. Like because don't you usually pour it over?
Pour it over. What you
cube?
usually muddle there's all
Yeah.
sorts of different schools on old fashioned and what you muddle and what you don't.
Right.
Indeed, there is.
Yes,
Yeah,
and,
okay,
and we
somebody
don't need to,
does
we,
love
we,
an
we don't need to
old-fashioned.
litigate that in the
We,
moment.
we can have a cocktail
I
one.
think we should do
Right.
it with the maple sugar candy report pack.
Right. But I do like the idea of using the syrup as opposed to the candy because then you're making sure that it dissolves fully. Right.
I
That
think-
there's no grit.
I
in the
think for
bottom.
me, in order to find my love of maple, I think I would need to like slow step into like light and get darker and darker. It must be like a red wine.
Absolutely.
And so like I just need to find my sweet white wine version and then find my way to a deep red burgundy at some point in the future.
Keep looking for the lightest maple syrups you can find, and that's not what I sell at the deli. I sell Miller's Michigan maple syrup that comes from the Miller family in Litchfield, Michigan.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's a that's a $20 jar of it, and it's great stuff.
Do you have it in the jars or is any of it in the tins? I love the old tins that you get, like the like proper like soup canny tins. I love those.
Not in the tin.
'Cause they aren't
right.
reusable. Like it's not tappable as
But
some
this is a
of them.
reusable jar, kind of
The
like a,
reusable-
kind
yeah,
of like
yeah,
a
yeah,
mason
yeah,
jar.
yeah.
Right.
When I remember watching the documentary about the sugar heist, those original cans where they're like very Canadian-y, but it's got the ribs on the outside, but it's painted and it just looks so pretty. I don't know. There's something cute.
The Canadian cans are really charming.
They are.
They are.
All right.
Although I do like the idea, the American version of this, as opposed to it being a consortium of being able to go to the producer, be able to have a specific producer's
Yes.
version of this, right? And then there's this idiosyncrasy of it as well, right? With when I went to visit the maple producer in Schenectady, what they told me was that one of the last few remaining food mysteries is what makes a batch of syrup a different color and a different grade. And as far as they were concerned, from their years of doing this, was that you never know. That some people associate with the weather, some people talk about being at the end of the season, but they've had light syrup batches at the end of the syrup season, and they've had heavy ones.
They've also said there's some people who say that I only tap 3 out of 4 years and I give my trees 1 year off. Like that's a whole thing out there as well. Which is
There's a lot of uncertainty out there in that maple market, and maybe the Canadians have the answers.
I do think there's some love of like enjoying the light, easier syrups where they're made by a local farm. That's just something to try, not something you can ever get again, kind of thing. You've got to go there to go get that, and there's something fun about that.
And this season, these are the syrups that we have, and they taste this way. And other seasons, they're going to taste this.
Yeah, yeah. This producer does not make this syrup; it makes this season's syrup, and it's this. It's the same with wine.
What was amazing, is sort of seeing all
Look
the
at me trying to
difference-
convince myself that it's great and it's like wine.
Well, what was
I
amazing?
think we need to go to Canada and find out.
Canada.
Yeah.
I've started a thing. So what was amazing to see was looking at all of the different syrups that came off of the evaporator, and how each one was its own different color. And the idea of grading is that grading fits a color range. So and it really is all about color. So so the syrup producers are going to grade this, and that's going to be the extra light or the amber, right? But even within there, those are going to be a range, and there's going to be different flavors.
I do think those evaporator pans are cool. When we toured one with Henry, and I just like that it's built just to increase surface area. It's not anything very technical. It's just a way to increase surface area and then have flow. And so that the syrup works its way through and grades but it gets to the end of the pan when it's about at the right viscosity of what it is.
Exactly.
It's a clever bit of kit.
And its color is going to be what it's going to be.
It is.
Right. The syrup decides. The sap is in control of this.
I think the thing that when we've gone to the ones locally over the last 2 or 3 years is just the sadness of the very short seasons and the very small productions they've been getting. Like it's got very hard for folks who are doing it on a small scale just as a side hustle. It's becoming less and less worth the journey at that point, whether you should do it or not, just the amount you're getting. Okay. Are we at the end?
We can
burned
be
it. We burned it at the end. Well, thank you, my lovelies. We'll see you really soon. Thank you so much, my lovelies, for tuning in and listening to today's episode of the Heartland Hot Dish podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners just like you. Until next time, keep savoring the flavors of the Heartland and sharing the love for this vibrant community. Take care and stay connected.